Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Jamie Files. Aliens, extraterrestrials, e.t.s, contactees, abductees, reptilians, zeta reticulans, alpha centaurians, arcturans. There's so many different alien species out there. Supposedly there's 57, and that's where Heinz ketchup came up with 57. That's why they have number 57 on Heinz ketchup. I don't know if that's actually true. I don't know if any of this is actually true, but what I can say is that in the last 10 years, there has been an increase of alien information in the world, and that's all because of the internet. Before that, they were all in books, but since the internet and YouTube, you've seen so much information on aliens come out, and some of it, people are claiming that they are contactees who have been, they're more special than the abductees. There's contactees and there's abductees. The contactees are more special because they're contacted and they're communicated to over a lifetime, and they don't get as messed with as the abductees. The abductees, they just get abducted, butt rammed, and they get dropped off, and their memories are wiped, so they don't even fully remember what happened. They don't, I mean, for all we know, it's maybe not even aliens that are abducting them. It could be government, it could be some mind control shit. Like, we don't actually know. We just have people's anecdotes and their stories. But I just want to tell you my evolution with the alien information and how I became privy to all this kind of stuff. And it all goes back to when I was a teenager. And when I was a teenager, I had a kind of a different upbringing. But let's just say that in a moment of mental freedom this one evening, I had a moment of sheer just mental freedom. It's hard to explain other than I felt 100% free in my mind, and that's free of worries, free of anxiety, free of what anyone thinks, 100%. And it dawned on me that it was such a unique feeling, and I noticed that the freer I felt, the more expansive the world became to me, the more expansive my mind became, and the more my mind expanded outward, I started thinking about the world and how it came to be the way that it is, and what lays beyond the boundaries of what I can perceive, what anybody can perceive, what is beyond your scope of awareness. And my mind just kept going. And I realized that you're automatically born into a society that already exists, and you go to school and you have to pick from a menu of jobs to choose and just pick one, and then you have to become that. And everything's already kind of laid out for you, and you just have to choose. But that's not actually true, but that's what you're told. But you could actually create whatever destiny you want. But I didn't really realize that before this evening. And so ever since I had that sense of freedom on that evening of being a teenager, I've just been on this. I discovered this David Icke book that I mentioned in another video, and it's called "And the Truth Shall Set You Free." So I discovered that book, and he talks about. I didn't even get to the reptilians in that book until years later, because it's such a thick book that I only read like 75% or 50% of it my first time through, and he mostly just talks about the power structure and how, basically, the Matrix. I also saw the movie The Matrix around this time, and that also made me question reality and existence and what is really going on. Who is the man behind the curtain? And then I hung out with these kind of hippie type people also, and they were heavily into like Pink Floyd and kind of stuff like that. And then they taught me about mostly just like the counterculture stuff of the 60s. And so having a background in all that kind of stuff made me discover the David Icke books. And then after I got into the David Icke books, then we move into like 2008. Like, this is like kind of where YouTube starts to come out. And then I saw videos about Alex Collier. Alex Collier, you just got to look him up if you've never heard of him. But look up Alex Collier. He's a supposed contactee And I think he was contacted by the Andromedans, the Andromedan race of aliens. So, I mean, his story was really convincing to me when I first watched his interview, which was actually filmed in 1998, but I didn't see it until 2008 because we didn't have YouTube before then. But I remember watching his whole entire interview several times, and I was convinced that this is real. Now, I'm not saying that it is or it isn't. I'm just saying that, like, I myself, I don't think I've never been abducted or anything like that. But there's definitely a lot of alien information on the internet, and it's compelling, and I think that's why I keep following it, and I want to see where this goes. And we also, to be straight up, we don't know where we came from. Like, humans, we don't know where we came from. They tell us that it's evolution, but evolution doesn't make sense because there's a missing link. And then if you check out this guy named Lloyd, you should check out this guy named Lloyd. He points out how many differences there are between apes, hominids, and humans. And there's just way too many differences to account for evolution. And just a few of the things that he talks about is just like how strength, like gorillas and apes and different kinds of those kind of hominids, they have like 100 times more strength pound for pound than humans do. And he also talks about the hair patterns. Humans in general have more hair pattern. Males have more hair pattern in the front of their bodies, whereas apes, monkeys and stuff, they have more hair pattern on the back of their bodies. And and then our brain capacity and everything else, there's just way too many differences for evolution to account for this many differences. So Lloyd Pye, David Icke, Alex Collier, those are, I'd say, three of the main guys that really convinced me to investigate this kind of stuff even more. And the alien stuff. So, but here's the thing. There's a book, actually the first book ever written about UFOs was by Carl Sagan. It was really interesting because he's a mainstream astrophysicist type of guy. I'm sorry if I'm wrong about that, but I just know he was like what Tyson DeGrasse is today. He was back then. But I'd heard of Carl Sagan a long time ago, like when I was a little kid and stuff, because he smokes weed, and I just would watch a bunch of his stuff. And he actually said that people claiming to see UFOs actually spikes, damn it, my phone's ringing, actually spikes during times of social distress. It actually spikes during times of social distress. And so now I'm wondering if aliens are actually even real, or is this a brain phenomenon? Is this a brain phenomenon? People getting abducted, missing time. But then there's the Betty and Barney Hill case where they claimed that they were driving along this is like in the 50s. It's a couple in America. They were driving along the highway one day, and then they saw this glowing light. It got really close to their car, and then they blanked out. And they have a bunch of missing time, like a huge chunk of missing time. And they just don't know how to account for that, but they claim that they do recall, like they have memories of being taken aboard a spaceship and were probed. They were straight up probed. And the aliens took tests of them and they probed them. And they've they put Betty and Barney Hill through a lot of lie detectors, and they've passed, most of them. So I've heard. So that's a weird case. But I mean, people seeing UFOs, we have pictures, and a lot of them are fake, but some of them are real. Some of them we don't know what the hell they are. But the people that are claiming to have been abducted and the sightings that people have of UFOs seems to spike, according to Carl Sagan, during times of social distress, meaning like when the country's at war. Like during his time in the 50s, moving into the 60s and everything like that, as a threat of the hydrogen bomb in America, and everybody was afraid that they could be wiped out at any minute. So he was pointing that out, that people were seeing UFOs and stuff like that a lot during that time, and that's kind of when you had the archetypes of the little green men and stuff like that, but they didn't change. Like, the archetype of aliens changed later into the classic oval eye, oval face looking caricature that you see, but up until then they were little green men. So that's something to think about, that the fact that Carl Sagan pointed that out. And so we still don't know what aliens actually are. I mean, unless you have been abducted yourself, you've been contacted yourself, or you've done ayahuasca, or you've done other psychedelic drugs and you've talked to something, or you've taken the veil down and you've seen some other reality, you've communicated with some other entity out there, then maybe that's alien, but maybe it's not. And I'm still a seeker. I'm going to keep doing it forever. But I just wanted to point that out, that I thought that was so interesting, that the fact that Carl Sagan said that people who claim to have alien encounters and UFO encounters spikes during times of social distress within a nation.